So this video is going to look at the sources that talk about two documents called the Constitutional Settlements. You can see quite a variety of sources, sections of Res Gestae, some Suetonius, a couple of coins, some Cassius Dio, some new author called Strabo, and also a very short section of Tacitus. So the first constitutional settlement was passed in 27 BC, and the sources are going to sort of talk about the powers that Augustus had underneath this particular constitutional settlement, and then it will also give you the reasons why, the events that led up to this constitutional settlement being put forward. So this bit, the Res Gestae, you can see talks about basically the powers that he gains as a result of the settlement. So again, we have Augustus pretending or trying to hoodwink the population, saying that he'd obtained everything by universal consent. He has the support of all people. I handed over the state from my power to the dominion of the Senate and the Roman people. So he gives all the powers back. By a Senate decree, I was called Augustus, so he gets a new title. And the doors of my temple, it means house really, were publicly clothed with laurel, remember that signifies victory, and a civic crown was fixed over my door. I will explain what a civic crown is later on when we look at a coin. And he admits, as a result of the constitutional settlement of 27 BC, I exceeded in all influence, but I had no greater power than the others who were colleagues with me in each magistracy. So there's a couple of Latin phrases that are used for this. This is talking about something called auctorius, which means authority, and then the power is about imperium. So he's suggesting that yes, okay, I had more influence than everybody, but I always had co-colleagues. So I always had, someone else being consul alongside me, or whatever kind of powers I had at the time. I was always equal to the other people. If that kind of makes, it's a bit of a strange kind of concept. We also have some evidence here that the Senate and the equestrian people, the Senate, the equestrians and the Roman people, call me father of the country. So he's called Patra Patre, so father of the fatherland, sort of kind of concept. So that gives you like a really rough idea of the kind of powers that he is given. We then start to have a look at some of the source opinions on the powers that he had. So Suetonius, we've read this bit before in section B, but it's more relevant again. So twice Augustus seriously considered restoring the res publica, so that means the republic. And the event that led to the settlement is vaguely described here. So at this time, he even summoned the magistrates in the Senate and handed over an account of the state of the empire. The fact he's able to kind of summon the magistrates in the Senate does give you an idea of how much power that he had in this period. But the fact that he was obviously attempting to give it back could show that he's trying to act like a republican. On reconsideration, however, he decided that to divide the power among several hands would be to jeopardize not only his own life as a private citizen, because obviously if he's got rivals they could try and kill him off, but importantly national security, so he chooses not to do so. So he kind of creates this new version of the republic, according to Suetonius. And he says, may I be privileged to build firm and lasting foundations for the government of the state. May I also achieve the reward to which I aspire, that of being known as the author of the best possible constitution. So this is sort of some acknowledgement by Augustus that perhaps he's not restoring the republic to its true nature, but kind of creating something better, a new version of it. And Suetonius is quite happy with this. He achieved this success having taken great trouble to prevent his political system from causing any individual distress. And obviously when we look through the sources, we will look at opposition that Augustus had, because obviously he does have some opposition. There's also this little quote here that talks about the fact that he was doing some rebuilding works and made the Senate look, made Rome look better, which was also in section B. Okie dokies. So we have our first coin. So we have the laurel wreath. So if I just, hang on a second, sorry, I need to get my pen out. There we go. You can, all right, see it there, kind of driven on. You can see the little tassels. So he's got the laurel wreath mentioned here. So remember that laurel is a symbol of victory for the Romans. So he's been given this because obviously he has kind of restored the republic and put down the foreign war. So this is a reference to the Battle of Actium. in particular, but also for his triple triumph, because remember he does get 3 triumphs after Actium mentioned in the previous video. He's also been called Imperator, so remember that just means commander, reminding us yet again that he is son of the deified. Now what's important here are a couple of things. I've highlighted one of them already. The fact that he's seated on a magistrate's chair shows that there is some kind of equality. There we go, equality to other magistrates. So he's not sitting above anybody else. He's acting the same as everybody else. So he is equal to them. And you can see him on this bench here. And according to this coin, he has restored to the Roman people their laws and rights. By winning at the Battle of Actium, he's created peace and stability, and therefore he has restored the Republic. Keeping in mind that all of these coins, remember, are propaganda. Anyone that comes from the emperors is just propaganda. This is an Aurus coin, so it's made of gold. So this would have been produced for special occasions, essentially. Okay? So if we scroll further down, we then have the first section of Cassius Dio, and this source is going to talk us through basically the events that led up to this constitutional settlement. Should we put it first in the source book? Whatever. So he basically goes to the Senate House and he gives a speech. So it mentions here that he has this particular speech. And in this speech, Augustus basically, Octavian, at the time, resigns. He says, I've done what I was set out to do. I've restored the Republic. The civil wars are at end. Egypt is no longer a threat. Blah, 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 blah. I am no longer needed. That's it. I'm done. And then sits down. Now, this was quite unexpected by quite a lot of people, but Cassius Dio does talk about the fact that maybe he had planted a few people who were aware of what the speech was going to say in order to create a bit of a commotion when the speech was given. So it says here there were a few who knew of his intention, so Cassius Dio is going to argue, and probably rightly so to be honest, that Octavian only did this in order to ensure that he was able to stay in his position. So he continued to applaud him enthusiastically throughout. So you're like, yay, he's resigning, he's restored, isn't he fantastic? There are some people who are a bit suspicious, thinking, what's he up to? And then there are others who genuinely thought that he was resigning and that he had finished his job. There were already a number of senators who detested the Republican Constitution, so that's, I'll talk about Section B, as a cause of internal dissension, which is true. We've also gone through several civil wars in the period that we've looked at, who've been pleased at the change of government, who warmly supported Octavian. So these guys are basically the plants. So Octavian probably, most likely, definitely, planted some key senators around the Senate House. So he gave this speech, and then these guys would stand up in the meeting and go, no, Octavian, you can't resign. We need you. Please resign. Please stay. So he would have picked these people because of these particular views. Those who believed he'd spoken the truth could not openly show their pleasure. Those who were in favour of his decision were prevented by their fears. So there is an element here that, despite the propaganda of Octavian, that everybody was really supportive of his power, there is also this, it's not quite dissent, but there's obviously concerns that if they do say something, then they're going to be targeted by Octavian. And if we think back to what we saw in Section B when he was part of the Second Triumvirate, obviously he had been at the forefront of the proscriptions, and hundreds, if not thousands of people had died. So their kind of reluctance to sort of openly state that they were quite happy for him to resign is kind of understandable. And it goes further on to say that, so those who were unconvinced did not dare to attack what he had said or to challenge his sincerity, some because they were afraid, and others because they didn't want to. Okay, cool. So you've got this kind of mix in the Senate of people kind of going, ooh, is he resigning? I'm kind of pleased, but I don't want to say anything. There's those who are kind of going, is he actually resigning, or is he just kind of making it all up? And then you've also got those who are in on it and saying, yes, no, please, don't resign. We need you to stay. So some didn't really want to stand up and say, yes, we don't want a republic anymore, because obviously that would have caused some problems. But what does happen, while he's reading his speech, they frequently broke in with shouts pleading for monarchical government. So those are the plants. Until they finally compelled him, as it seemed, you can see Cassius Dio is not convinced by this theatrical show, to accept autocratic powers. So the idea that he now has complete control. The first action he took was to have a decree passed, granting to the members of his future bodyguard twice the rate of pay. So he has a new kind of section of the army created in order to protect him. And these guys are the Praetorian Guard. There we go. Okay. So genuine was his desire to lay down absolute power. So there is definitely Cassius Dio being pretty sarcastic. I would agree with him on that respect. So then we have Octavian's leadership was confirmed by the Senate and the people, so people were supportive of the settlement, but he still wished to be regarded as a representative of the people. So, while he undertook the whole care of supervision of the public business, he announced he would not personally govern all of the provinces. Those that which he did take on, he would not continue to govern permanently. So this is one of the key aspects of the first constitutional settlement, is the division of the empire. And he divides it basically between the provinces that he has and the provinces that the Senate has. And he does this in order to look like he's not just taking power over everything, that the Senate still has a role in the provinces. In the event, he handed over the weaker provinces to the Senate on the ground that they were at peace and free from war. So that's the selling point. He kept the stronger under his authority, arguing that they were insecure and exposed to danger and had enemies near their frontiers, or capable of starting a serious rebellion. Now, the real reason for this is mentioned here. So the real object of this arrangement was that senators should be unarmed and unprepared for war, while he possessed arms and controlled the troops. So to the Senate, yes, you need peaceful places, easier for you to run, you can get more money, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'll take over these really difficult ones and I will make sure that I bring stability to the empire. Reality, Senate doesn't have the army, he has the army. Very clever move. So essentially this bit just kind of tells you the division. So I've done it in two different colours. So the green is for the Senate and then the pale blue, bright blue is for Octavian. So I won't read through that because it just divides it up for you. We're going to do that in a lesson. And he points out, Cassius Dio, that at times he does shift around the different provinces. So he returns Cyprus and Gallia Narbonosius, I think I said that right, back to the people, to the Senate, and then takes on Dalmatia for himself. And this happens for other emperors, which are mentioned kind of vaguely in here. Since Octavian wished even then to impress upon the Romans that his mode of government was far removed from monarchical rule, he undertook to limit his administration of the provinces assigned to him for a period of 10 years. So this is another stage of his cleverness. So yes, he takes on his provinces and he has this imperium and all the rest of it. What he also has is it is limited to 10 years. So in theory, the Senate could then refuse to renew his powers every 10 years. They're not going to, but that gives them at least seemingly a lot of power over his personal position. If the provinces were pacified more quickly, he would return them quickly to the Senate, and then he appointed senators themselves to govern both types of provinces, except for Egypt. For this alone, he appointed a knight. So Egypt stays under his control. Okay. And we'll mention it later on in different sources. But essentially, he's trying to keep control of Egypt because it's where the grain is, it's where the wealth is, and he's worried about some senator going in there basically and taking over and becoming a rival. So he keeps it under really strict control for himself. Next, he decreed that senatorial provinces should be governed by magistrates chosen by lot. So that's very similar to the old system under the Republic, except in a case where a senator was entitled to special privileges because he had lots of kids. So these governors, so the senatorial governors, sent out by a vote of the Senate taking public session. They're not allowed to carry a sword because they don't have, or wear a military uniform because they don't have the army, remember. And he also uses the title proconsul for them. So it doesn't matter what position they've been previously, the leaders of the senatorial provinces are proconsuls. So there's slight changes in administration of the Republic. Of the system, sorry. The other governors who were to serve in the imperial provinces are his provinces, was to be appointed by the emperor, obviously, and these guys get a different title, and these guys now become the propraetors. Now, obviously, that's because they are below him, so therefore they can't be consuls because he's like consul. which kind of makes sense logically. The title consul gave to the senatorial nominees on the ground that the duties were more peaceful and called them proconsuls, so it's exactly the same thing twice. Thanks for that, Cassius Dio. Accordingly, the governors whom the emperor had appointed were to be known as propraetors. Yes, we know, you just told us this. And to hold office for as much longer than a year as he thought fit. So these are the ones for his provinces, so he could make a decision if they were 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Because obviously he has the army, these guys are to wear the military uniform and have the sword, and they can obviously execute people as necessary. Both these classes of officials assume the insignia of their position of authority when they enter the allotted province and lay them down immediately after concluding their term of office. This is particularly important for the imperial ones because obviously they're then stepping back into civilian life because they're no longer commander of the army. Cool. We then have Strabo Geography, which basically tells you everything that Cassio just told you. So I'm not going to particularly run through it. There's a couple of nice, they're a little bit easier to quote. So the government of the provinces have been apportioned in different ways at different times. So, i.e., he was changing them. He became supreme ruler for life in war and peace. There we go. He divides up the empire. Fine. Same thing. I've used the same colours, so I'm not going to go over it again. Okay, cool. So we then have this coin called the civic crown. So this is another really important part of the settlement. So it gives you a bit of a clue about what it's here. It's for saving the life, not drawn that very well, for saving the citizens. So this is, you can sort of see it in the background here. There's the symbol of Rome. Augustus' name, and you can see like some laurel sort of stuff. This is the civic crown. So the civic crown is an honorary title. Oh, it's about honorary. There we go. Whatever. Honorary title. It doesn't bring any power whatsoever, and it's from the Republic, and it's supposed to be awarded to anyone who saved, the life of a citizen. Okay, so that's what it's used for. So in terms of for Augustus, as he is basically now known, he gets this for saving Rome. So he saves all citizens, and he's saving Rome specifically from Egypt. So he's given this honorary title as a result of it. So it's a really nice one to show the kind of level of support that Octavian / Augustus had in the Republic. Okay, so later on we then have another constitutional settlement. So this is 4 years later. Now the circumstances of this one passing are different. So the first one is all theatrical, Augustus pretending to step down, but in reality wanted to secure his position. This one is more about he realizes that he basically has too much centralized power. So after the first constitutional settlement, he was still one of the consuls. And leading into 23 BC, there were a couple of different senatorial plots to try and remove him. Sort of like who were going to try and kill him, to be more specific. So he kind of realizes that his position is untenable. He can't continue to do this. He was also really unwell in 23 BC. He actually thought he was going to die, and somehow he pulled through. And it's that kind of these two things at the same time, these two realizations that he thinks, right, I need to step back a little bit, at least in the eyes of the Senate, to make them feel happier. Because obviously if he's always one consul at the top of the cursor's honorum, because remember there's only 2 consuls at any one time, that means climbing the cursor's honorum is even harder for other senators, because there's only one consulship available to them. So he basically is holding up the system, and that's where this resentment was being built up, hence why there were these plots. So he decides, right, okay, I need to change my tact, and he decides to take a different title instead, which will be mentioned a bit later. So that's the context of 23. Okay, so Augustus was to exercise complete and permanent authority over all these matters. So these are quite nice quotes in terms of like the level of power he had. He had not only the control of the funds, but also command of the army. So that's the same from the first settlement. At any rate, when his 10-year period of office expired, another 5 years was voted to him, then another 5, then after 10, and then 10, then 10, fifth. So basically, it shows that they kept renewing his power, so he has basically control over everything. And according to Cassius Dio, you might sense that Cassius Dio is a little bit upset with Augustus. He remains sole ruler for life. I would argue that Cassius Dio is possibly exaggerating the level of power that Octavian had, but he's not far wrong. Okay. Octavian had even before received many honours when the questions of declining the sovereignty and of allocating the provinces were being discussed. True, that's part of the settlements. So you have the laurel trees. We've also got the sort of the civic crowny sort of stuff being mentioned here again. Okay. The name Augustus was conferred on him by the Senate and the people, and they wished to give him a title of some special eminence. Now, according to Cassius Dio, Octavian actually wanted to be called Romulus, but he realised that everybody would see that as a king, so he decided not to do it. So he instead, I don't know why I highlight this, he takes on the title of Augustus, which means revered one. Hang on, I'll write that on. Revered one. So basically means he's just slightly more special than everybody else. He's kind of sacred, I guess. Whoops, sorry, I brushed the microphone. From the power of both the people and the Senate was wholly transferred into the hands of Augustus. Like I said, Cassius Dio doesn't particularly like Octavian. And it was from this time that a monarchy, strictly speaking, was established. So these are all very good quotes against the idea that he restored the Republic. The entire conduct and direction of affairs depended on the wishes of one man who holds power at the time. He's now also going to talk about the emperors in general. So the emperors had arrogated, I can't think how to say that, to themselves all the functions with their actual titles attached to the offices in which the power resided. This is not just about Octavian, this is about all of the emperors. The emperors very often created consuls, they were imperator for life, they'd use the title instead of kings and dictatorships, but they secure for themselves the prerogatives of those positions through the title of imperator, empowers them to raise troops, collect funds, declare war, conclude peace, rule foreigners and citizens alike, and even put to death both knights and senators within the Senate's city limits. So this is quite a nice kind of summary of the powers of all of the emperors that we're going to be looking at. By virtue of holding the consulship, they scrutinise our lives and morals as well as conducting the census. They add some names to the orders of knights and senators and strike out others as they see fit. So that kind of gives you an idea of the relationship they have with the different parts of society. They exercise supreme jurisdiction in all matters of both profane and sacred. So they have like massive religious power. We are eventually getting back to Augustus. He's just summarising everything. So they get given tribunican power, gives them the rights of the power of the veto, the consequences of any measure taken by any other official, and protects them from insult or abuse. So in summary, according to Cassius Dio, their object has been to create the impression that they hold no power without a gift having been made of it to them. So in other words, the emperors were always trying to show that the people, the Senate, everybody gave them the power. They never asked for any of these powers. Probably correct. So we then finally have some specifics about the second constitutional settlement. So the Commons awarded Augustus lifelong tribunican power. So he basically steps down from being a consul down to being a tribune. So if we remember the cursus honorum, I'll draw it really badly, really quickly. There we go. So, that's really bad. It's nowhere near long enough. Anyway, you have consuls right at the top, right? And then you have tribunes down here. And then you go in as aedile, and then you have quaestors at the bottom, and then you have praetors. There we go, rubbish. So basically, Octavian has gone from here, being at the top of the system, it does say consul, I promise, so he steps down into becoming a tribune instead. So if you look at it in terms of the cursus honorum, it's a massive step down. He really has given up a lot of power, and he also has colleagues all the way through. The Senate also voted him the task of supervising public morals and scrutinising laws, another lifelong appointment. Although he did not adopt the title of censor, he was privileged to hold a public census. So that's like the counting of everybody. It's not a very exciting job. So he's never censor, but yet he can control morals of everybody. So he passes religious laws and things like that. Tacitus is very cynical about the emperors. this is going to be shown here. The tribunicum power was a term formulated by Augustus to express the supremacy of his own position. You'll probably use that a lot when you're talking about whether or not Augustus had sole power and or restored the Republic. It allowed him to avoid the title of king or dictator, true, giving him a title to his predominant position in all of the highest offices of the state. He then selected Marcus Agrippa to share this title with him as a colleague. Yes, Agrippa was consul at point, who was also tribune as well. He also then talks about Tiberius Nero, that is his stepson, and he sort of uses him at some point to gives him the title, has him as a colleague, to ensure that he has his successor, but that's not in our period, not right now. Then we have Augustus's version of the events. So when the dictatorship was offered to me, I did not accept it. That is true. I did not evade the curatorship of grain in the height of the food shortage, which I so arranged that within a few days I freed the entire city from the present fear and danger. So there was a massive food shortage. Some historians suggest that maybe Octavian deliberately created this food shortage in order so that he could fix the food shortage and look really good. Depends how cynical you're being. Obviously, he's not going to say that in the Res Gestae. And when the annual and perpetual consulate was then again offered to me, I did not accept it. So at some point, he was offered to be consul forever, and he said, no. And then, obviously, he does step down and becomes tribune. Okay, so there is a summary then, long-winded summary, of the different powers and titles that Octavian, then Augustus, has under the two settlements.